The day I watched Pamela's Mercedes sink 6 inches into my front lawn, right where I'd installed my little surprise, was probably the most satisfying moment of my 3 years in suburban hell. Hey, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I'd been gritting my teeth for 11 months, watching her crush my lawn like she'd crushed the lives of neighbors before me. Once upon a time, I was a playground designer with a clean conscience, but now, along with Pamela's $80,000 Mercedes stuck on my property, my conscience was wearing a bright red hat and laughing maniacally, because as my mother used to say, "Son, sometimes your enemies need a bath in life's expensive lessons." My name is Gregory Matthews, and until recently, I was just a 38-year-old playground designer trying to rebuild my life after a messy divorce. My ex-wife had been cheating with her boss. Classic, I know. And I decided a fresh start was in order. I chose Sunnyside Estates specifically for that corner lot with the beautiful oak tree, perfect for eventually building my dream workshop. I sank 80% of my savings into that house, planning to create a peaceful sanctuary where I could design safe, creative spaces for children. The irony that I'd soon be using those same design skills for far less innocent purposes still makes me chuckle. It started innocently enough. About 3 weeks after moving in, I noticed tire tracks cutting across the corner of my lawn. At first, I thought it was kids or maybe a delivery driver taking a shortcut. But then I started seeing the same tracks at exactly 8:15 every weekday morning. So I set up a cheap security camera, and that's when I caught her. Pamela Harding, 52, HOA board vice president, deliberately driving her white Mercedes SUV across my lawn to save time on her morning commute. 12 seconds, that's all her shortcut saved her. 12 miserable seconds at the cost of my carefully maintained lawn. 12 seconds, I muttered to my camera. 12 precious seconds, worth more than 15 years of lawn care. Fine, Ms. Harding. Game on. Being the reasonable adult I thought I was, I left a polite note on her door explaining the damage and requesting she use the street like everyone else. I even offered to contribute to repairs. The next morning, my camera caught her reading the note, laughing derisively, crumpling it up, and then deliberately driving over my lawn again. This time honking her horn as she crossed. The message was clear. This wasn't about convenience. This was about power. That night, I Googled Pamela Harding Sunnyside Estates and discovered 8 similar complaints about her in just 3 years. A call to the previous homeowner confirmed my suspicions. You've inherited the neighborhood nightmare. That whole HOA board is her puppet show. The following day, I found an anonymous postcard in my mailbox, "Sell or Suffer. No one beats Harding." It was printed in block letters, but the message had Pamela written all over it. That night, staring in the mirror, I heard my ex-wife's voice in my head. "You're too gentle, Greg. You don't know how to fight for yourself." She was right, but I'd learned my lesson. Sometimes you have to become the wolf to survive among wolves, and Pamela Harding? She hadn't seen my teeth yet. I decided to attend the upcoming HOA meeting, armed with documentation of the damage and legal citations about property trespassing. I expected a reasonable discussion. What I got was my introduction to Pamela's kingdom. The meeting was held in the community center, a building that reeked of furniture polish and passive aggression. About 30 homeowners sat in uncomfortable folding chairs while the HOA board, all 5 of them, sat elevated on a small stage like minor deities. Board President Carl Williams was a 65-year-old man who introduced himself as a retired judge. He seemed reasonable enough over the phone, but when I politely raised the lawn issue during the public comments period, not even mentioning Pamela by name, everything changed. Pamela immediately interrupted. "Oh, here we go. Some new residents don't understand how things work in established communities." The way she emphasized new made it sound like a contagious disease. She went on to explain that what I was calling trespassing was actually an unofficial easement that everyone uses and had always been there. I tried to interject with facts. There was no easement on my property records, and satellite images showed the path only appeared after I moved in, but Carl quickly deferred to Pamela, citing her longer tenure in the community. Looking around the room, I noticed how other homeowners avoided eye contact with me. They were afraid of her. But one woman in the back caught my eye, giving me a sympathetic look. The meeting concluded with Pamela publicly humiliating me as a troublemaker who doesn't understand community values. As I left, defeated, the sympathetic woman approached, introducing herself as Heather Johnson, a landscape architect who lived 2 doors down. "Don't take it personally," she whispered. "She does this to everyone new. We should talk." The next morning, I found a violation notice in my mailbox for unkempt lawn conditions, clearly Pamela's retaliation. I spent the weekend repairing the tire tracks, planting new grass seed, and installing a small decorative fence with a "Please keep off grass" sign, all within HOA guidelines. The following Monday, my security footage showed Pamela deliberately driving over both the fence and sign, destroying them completely. That night, I sat on my porch looking at the wreckage and realized this wasn't about a shortcut or even about pettiness. This was Pamela asserting dominance. And I was about to learn that in neighborhood warfare, I was facing a professional. Heather visited me the next morning as I was assessing the fence damage. She brought coffee and perspective. Over steaming cups, she explained Pamela's pattern. Target one homeowner at a time, usually newcomers, until they either submit to her authority or move. "She's been doing this for years," Heather explained. "I've been in a year-long battle with her over my native plant garden. She calls it weeds, though it's won Sustainable Landscaping Awards." Heather revealed she'd once worked in environmental compliance before becoming a landscape architect, knowledge that would prove invaluable later. Within days, I discovered Pamela had filed 3 more violations against me: unauthorized lawn structures, the destroyed fence, improper landscape maintenance, and unapproved exterior fixtures, my security camera. I documented everything and filed counter-complaints with evidence from my cameras. Pamela escalated by now driving across my lawn twice daily, creating deeper ruts. Carl visited me privately, admitting Pamela was out of line but advising me to pick your battles for my own good. His demeanor was strange, not just conflict avoidant, but genuinely fearful. Determined to protect my property, I installed large decorative boulders along the edge of my lawn, perfectly within HOA guidelines. Pamela was furious but couldn't drive over them. She retaliated by having her landscaper blow leaves and debris onto my property. Then I received notice of a special HOA meeting to discuss problem properties, clearly targeting me. The night before the meeting, my cameras caught Pamela spray painting my boulders with obscenities. I had her dead to rights, committing actual property damage. I thought this would finally end it. I was wrong, because what Pamela did next would make her petty vandalism look like child's play. I presented my evidence at the special meeting, including clear footage of Pamela's vandalism. Most neighbors were shocked. Carl was visibly disturbed, and Pamela was caught off guard. Carl reluctantly announced that Pamela would need to pay for damages, and a formal warning was issued. Pamela appeared contrite, offering a public apology that seemed sincere. For 2 peaceful weeks, I thought the war was over. I began plans for my workshop and started dating Heather, whose intelligence and resilience I found increasingly attractive. Then came the certified letter that changed everything, a county notice claiming someone had reported my planned workshop as a commercial operation requiring special permits. The complaint included detailed false accusations about heavy machinery and client traffic. My permits were now delayed 6 to 8 months, requiring expensive traffic studies and environmental assessments. When I confronted Pamela, she feigned innocence but hinted she had friends at the county. That night, I discovered her brother, Jeremy Harding, was the county commissioner overseeing zoning. Staring at the bureaucratic nightmare Pamela had engineered, I realized I'd been thinking too small. She didn't just want to win. She wanted to destroy me, financially, and force me out. It was time to think bigger. I took a week off work to research HOA laws, county regulations, and Pamela's past. What I discovered was stunning. Her real estate business specialized in selling homes in our neighborhood. Her power in the HOA directly benefited her financially. Heather and I began gathering evidence, discovering Pamela had driven at least 3 families out of the neighborhood, who then listed their homes with her. We also found something much darker. Jeremy had consistently approved lucrative development projects near properties Pamela acquired through her intimidation tactics. Our investigation deepened when Heather revealed she'd previously worked in the county commissioner's office, where she accidentally discovered documents about a secret arrangement between Pamela and Jeremy. She was fired shortly after for information leakage. We were no longer dealing with a typical Karen. This was a sophisticated real estate fraud operation. Meanwhile, county building inspectors began harassing me with anonymous complaints about unpermitted business operations. A local news website published an article with doctored images suggesting my playground designs were unsafe. My company received complaints from concerned parents about my designs, all traceable to a fake email address. Then came the financial attack. My bank notified me about foreclosure proceedings due to violations of an HOA conditional loan clause, a provision that didn't exist when I purchased the house. Just when things seemed darkest, I received a message from a local bank employee who'd previously been victimized by Pamela, providing evidence my loan documents had been falsified. I photographed Pamela meeting with the building inspector and Carl at a distant restaurant, exchanging documents about my property. An unexpected ally emerged, Harold Harrison, a retired county planning director who had previously blocked Jeremy from similar schemes. Heather and I developed a counter-strategy, supported by Harold and 3 former homeowners who'd been Pamela's victims. Pamela's problem isn't that she's smart, I told Heather. It's that she always wins because people give up too soon. She's never faced someone patient enough to wait for her to truly expose herself. That night, as I researched, I spotted Pamela and 2 unfamiliar men photographing my house, measuring the front yard and marking positions on my lawn. Sometimes you have to let the predator get confident enough to become careless, and I think Pamela Harding just made the biggest mistake of her life. Our plan was meticulous. I would appear completely defeated, even spreading false information about selling my house at a loss and moving within 30 days. I installed an automatic sprinkler system under my lawn, but with a crucial modification. Hidden among the sprinklers were waterproof microphones and tiny cameras. I began digging in my yard at night, making sure Pamela noticed from her window. By morning, my lawn looked normal, freshly sodded where the tire tracks had been. Pamela drove across it the next morning, just as I knew she would. She never noticed the slight depression in the ground or the high-tech surveillance system I'd hidden in my special sprinkler setup. Tonight, I whispered to myself, the real party begins. The operation culminated on signing day. Pamela and Jeremy arrived at my house with a notary, later identified as their longtime accomplice. I had my recording system ready with my support team, Heather, Harold, and 2 special investigators, hiding in the bedroom. Pamela presented clearly fraudulent paperwork, with the selling price just 40% of actual value, alongside documents releasing Jeremy from all liability. When I pretended concern about the county seizing my house for a parking lot, Pamela laughed. There was never going to be a parking lot. That's just a tactic we use to devalue properties. We've done it with 22 houses before yours. Jeremy boasted about manipulating planning documents, changing condemnation boundaries, and how they'd ruin the reputations of homeowners who refused to sell. As I continued asking questions, Pamela grew impatient. Do you want to sign or not? If not, we have plenty of ways to make you crumble completely. Ask Carl what happened to his wife, Jeremy added chillingly. She didn't die of cancer like everyone thinks. She found out about our operations and was going to talk in unfortunate accident. I signed the documents, but they were prepared copies with different terms that Pamela and Jeremy didn't notice in their overconfidence. As Pamela was about to pack up the papers, I asked, "What about the doctor you helped disappear? You just said that, right, Jeremy?" They were stunned when I turned on my TV, showing their conversation being live-streamed to the district attorney's office. I revealed I'd recorded all their meetings for 3 weeks using the hidden devices in my sprinkler system, the very path Pamela used daily. Jeremy panicked. "You don't understand. They have everything. People are dead, Pamela." The bedroom door opened, revealing the special investigators, along with Carl, who'd been wearing a recording device for the past month. "I didn't win because I'm stronger," I told Pamela, "but because I'm more patient. You always win because people give up too soon." Pamela transformed from arrogant to frantic, finally showing her true nature, a power-hungry, white-collar criminal. Carl completed his redemption journey, revealing Pamela had contributed to his wife's death by delaying cancer treatment with falsified insurance documents. Jeremy completely collapsed, confessing everything for a reduced sentence, betraying Pamela entirely. Pamela and Jeremy were arrested on multiple charges: fraud, document forgery, extortion, and even conspiracy to murder. Search warrants executed simultaneously at Pamela's office and home uncovered documents on 22 similar real estate fraud cases. Neighborhood residents gathered outside my house, many of them Pamela's former victims, to witness her being handcuffed and taken away. As she was loaded into the police car, she screamed threats at me. "You have no idea how many connections I have. I'll be back. You'll lose everything." The case exploded into national news, shaking both the real estate industry and local governments across the country. I became a key witness in a major federal investigation into real estate fraud and HOA corruption nationwide. Pamela faced over 30 charges, from real estate fraud and document forgery to extortion and conspiracy to commit more serious crimes. A special committee was formed to review all of Jeremy's planning decisions over the past 7 years, leading to numerous new cases. The 22 families who had been Pamela's victims received full compensation, many having their lost professional licenses restored. During the trial, Pamela hired top lawyers, but was still convicted when the video and audio evidence proved irrefutable. Jeremy cooperated fully, exposing a corruption network, including at least 5 other county officials and 8 other HOA presidents. Prosecutors discovered Pamela had conducted similar scams in 3 other states, with over 60 victims and estimated damages of $75 million. Her final breakdown came when her only son, 33, testified that his mother had taught him how to forge documents since he was 15. I declined all legal privileges and rewards, only requesting fair compensation for each affected family. Heather revealed that 3 years earlier, she had nearly committed suicide after Pamela destroyed her legal career and marriage, explaining her career change to landscape architecture as a form of healing. Carl not only testified against Pamela, but established a non-profit organization helping victims of HOA corruption nationwide. Pamela, now in prison, became completely isolated as all her allies abandoned her, including her children and ex-husbands. The case sparked new HOA transparency laws in 12 states, nicknamed the Matthews Act in our state. The entire Sunnyside Estates HOA board was dissolved, replaced by a transition committee led by Heather. Using her legal background and landscape architecture expertise, Heather created a breakthrough, fair HOA model based on transparency, democratic participation, and environmental sustainability. She was invited as an honorary fellow by leading law schools to develop her justice architecture theory, combining environmental justice principles with community space design. The Matthews-Johnson Act became official state legislation, reforming HOA practices statewide. Pamela received a 25-year sentence and was ordered to pay tens of millions in restitution, losing all assets, business licenses, and reputation. Jeremy got 15 years after cooperation and lives with the guilt of contributing to at least 2 innocent deaths. I finally built my dream workshop, creating revolutionary playground designs with integrated safety features. Heather and I married in our backyard, attended by all the families who had been Pamela's victims. A year after the incident, neighborhood residents established an annual lawn day celebrating Justice's victory. I donated a new community playground built on land previously owned by Pamela. My lawn is now meticulously maintained, with a small commemorative sprinkler that neighbors joke is the secret weapon against corruption, though it's actually an art installation designed by Heather. The playground plaque reads, "Sometimes, protecting your small patch of grass is the first step to protecting an entire community." Looking out at children safely playing on my front lawn, with a new family having moved into Pamela's old house, I reflected on my journey. My ex-wife used to say I was too gentle, that I didn't know how to fight. Maybe she was right. But sometimes fighting isn't about who shouts the loudest, it's about who thinks the smartest. Not about strength, but patience. As a car drove by, carefully avoiding my lawn, I smiled to myself. That was the most expensive lesson Pamela Harding ever received. Never underestimate a man with a sprinkler system and the ability to wait. I moved to Sunnyside Estates, seeking a fresh start after my divorce. As a playground designer, I was drawn to the corner property at 37 Oakbrook Circle, specifically for the extra yard space where I could build my workshop. The development promised exclusive living with community values, though I'd soon discover whose values they actually meant. I invested considerable time and money making the place my own. Premium Kentucky bluegrass for the front lawn, a custom irrigation system, and plans for native trees along the property line. For the first few weeks, I focused entirely on settling in, barely noticing the neighborhood dynamics around me. Then one morning, I spotted tire tracks cutting across my lawn, a perfect diagonal line that had crushed a section of my newly laid sod. I initially dismissed it as a delivery driver's mistake or teenagers being careless. I repaired the damage without much thought. But when it happened again and again, always in the exact same spot and angle, I decided to investigate. I installed an inexpensive security camera disguised in a bird feeder facing the damaged area. The footage I reviewed the next morning left me stunned. At precisely 8:15, a white Mercedes SUV deliberately drove across my lawn. This wasn't an accident. The driver slowed down before turning onto my property, accelerated across the grass, and smoothly rejoined the street. The entire maneuver saved maybe 12 seconds compared to following the proper route. Checking previous days' footage confirmed the pattern. Same car, same time, same driver. A woman with short blonde hair and oversized sunglasses. After searching through my HOA welcome packet, I identified the culprit, Pamela Harding, Vice President of the Sunnyside Estates Homeowners Association. Her bio indicated she'd lived in the community for 15 years and worked as a premier real estate agent specializing in exclusive properties. Her photo showed a woman in her early 50s with an immaculate bob haircut, bleached teeth, and a smile that never reached her eyes. Being naturally non-confrontational, I opted for diplomacy. I wrote a polite note explaining the damage to my lawn, included photographs of the tire tracks, and mentioned the cost of repairs. I even offered to split the expenses, assuming it was a misunderstanding. Without mentioning the security footage, I left the note in her mailbox. The next morning's camera feed captured Pamela reading my note for about 10 seconds, before laughing derisively, crumpling it into a ball, and tossing it onto her passenger seat. At 8:15 sharp, she drove across my lawn again, this time honking her horn as if celebrating her trespass. That evening, as I sat on my porch staring at the deepening ruts, something shifted inside me. This wasn't a misunderstanding or ordinary rudeness. This was deliberate disrespect, a power play sending a clear message. She didn't have to follow rules that applied to everyone else. I remembered something my mentor once said. The difference between a bully and a leader is that a bully needs you to feel small so they can feel big. A quick internet search about Sunnyside Estates and Pamela Harding revealed disturbing patterns: complaints about selective HOA rule enforcement, mysterious property damage to homes that had opposed her initiatives, and new homeowners frequently selling within a year. Most alarming was discovering that the 3 previous owners of my house had all sold within 18 months, all significantly below market value, and all listed with Pamela's real estate agency. The next day, I found an anonymous postcard in my mailbox. Sell or suffer. No one beats Harding. That night, staring in the mirror, I heard my ex-wife's voice. You're too gentle, Greg. You never stand up for yourself. But something was different now. I'd already lost enough. I wouldn't lose again. I decided to attend the upcoming HOA meeting, prepared with facts and documentation. I just didn't realize yet that I was playing a game whose rules I didn't understand, against an opponent who had rigged the board long before I arrived. The HOA meeting was held in the community center, a single-story brick building that smelled faintly of furniture polish and passive aggression. About 30 homeowners sat in uncomfortable folding chairs facing a small raised platform, where 5 board members sat behind a table, name placards positioned in front of them like judges at a competition no one had voluntarily entered. Pamela sat to the right of Carl Williams, the HOA president, a man in his mid-60s whose official bio described him as a retired judge dedicated to maintaining community standards. Carl had sounded reasonable when I'd called to confirm the meeting time, but I noticed how deferentially he leaned toward Pamela whenever she whispered to him. I took a seat in the middle of the room, not wanting to appear either confrontational, front row, or intimidated, back row. I'd brought a folder containing photographs of the lawn damage, printouts of property line maps, and the section of HOA bylaws concerning property respect and damage remediation. I'd even prepared a reasonable 3-point solution. Pamela would stop driving across my lawn, reimburse me for sod damage with receipts provided, and we would both consider the matter resolved with no further action. Mature, straightforward, problem-solving. I was confident in my approach. The meeting began with standard formalities: approval of previous minutes, treasurer's report, discussion of upcoming community events. I waited patiently for the open floor portion where residents could raise concerns. When Carl finally announced, "The floor is now open for community input, limited to 3 minutes per speaker," I raised my hand. Carl acknowledged me with a nod that seemed almost apologetic. Yes, the gentleman in the blue shirt. Please state your name and address for the record. Standing with my folder in hand, I introduced myself calmly. Good evening. I'm Gregory Matthews, 37 Oakbrook Circle. I've been a resident for about 2 months now, and I'd like to discuss an ongoing issue with property damage to my front lawn. I described the situation factually. The repeated tire tracks, the pattern of timing, the cost of repairs. I deliberately avoided naming Pamela, instead saying, a vehicle has been regularly driving across my corner lot as a shortcut, causing damage to my new sod installation. I was just about to present my proposed solution when Pamela interrupted. Oh, here we go, she said with an exaggerated sigh loud enough to carry through the room. Some new residents, she emphasized the word like it was a contagious disease, don't understand how things work in established communities. She turned to address the room rather than me. A classic power move to make this about public opinion rather than facts. That corner has been used as a pass-through for years. It's practically an unofficial easement at this point. Everyone uses it. It's always been there. I tried to interject with facts. Actually, I checked the property records, and there's no easement registered, and satellite images from last year show no path until recently. Pamela cut me off, again, this time with a dismissive wave of her hand. Mr. Matthews clearly doesn't understand our community values. This is exactly the kind of rigid, unneighborly attitude that disrupts our harmonious environment. She looked around the room, making eye contact with several residents who nodded in apparent agreement. Carl, rather than moderating this increasingly one-sided exchange, deferred to Pamela. Pamela has lived here longer and is very familiar with our community customs, he offered weakly. I looked around the room, noticing how most homeowners avoided eye contact with me. They were afraid of her. But one woman in the back, mid-30s with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, caught my eye and gave me a sympathetic look that seemed to say, I've been there. The discussion concluded with Pamela suggesting that perhaps I needed time to adjust to community living, and proposing that the architectural committee, which she chaired, would review the situation. No vote was taken, no resolution offered, and my 3-point solution remained unheard. As the meeting moved to other business, I sat in stunned silence, realizing I'd just been publicly outmaneuvered by someone who had clearly done this before. As I gathered my unused documents at the meeting's end, the auburn-haired woman approached me. Don't take it personally, she said quietly, extending her hand. I'm Heather Johnson. I live 2 doors down from you on Oakbrook. She does this to everyone new. Heather's handshake was firm, her expression sympathetic but not pitying. We should talk, she added, handing me a business card that identified her as a landscape architect specializing in sustainable design. Not here, though. She glanced meaningfully toward Pamela, who was watching our interaction with narrowed eyes. The next morning, I found an official violation notice in my mailbox, citing unkempt lawn conditions and demanding immediate remediation or a fine of $100. The violation was, of course, the tire tracks Pamela herself had created. The notification was signed by Carl, but the vindictive timing made the true author obvious. I spent the weekend carefully repairing the damaged sod, reseeding bare patches, and installing a small decorative fence, all within HOA guidelines, with a tasteful, "Please keep off grass" sign. Monday morning, 8:15 sharp, my security camera captured Pamela's Mercedes deliberately swerving to run over both the fence and sign, destroying them completely. She actually slowed down to ensure maximum damage, then accelerated away. The message was clear. She wasn't just taking a shortcut, she was making a point. This wasn't about convenience or tradition or community values. This was about power. Her power, specifically, and making sure I understood my place in her domain. That evening, sitting on my porch, surveying the wreckage, I had a realization that changed everything. I wasn't dealing with an unreasonable neighbor or even a typical HOA tyrant. I was facing someone who systematically intimidated others to maintain control, who saw any challenge, no matter how reasonable, as a threat to be eliminated. And if the fearful faces at the HOA meeting were any indication, her strategy had been working for years. I was about to learn a harsh lesson. In neighborhood warfare, I was facing a professional. Heather visited me the next morning as I was assessing the fence damage. She brought coffee in a thermal carafe and a perspective I desperately needed. We sat on my porch steps, steam rising from our mugs in the cool morning air, and she explained Pamela's pattern. target one homeowner at a time, usually newcomers, until they either submit to her authority or move. She's been doing this for years, Heather explained, blowing gently on her coffee. I've been in a year-long battle with her over my native plant garden. She calls it weeds, even though it's won Sustainable Landscaping Awards from the county. Heather revealed she'd previously worked in environmental compliance before shifting to landscape architecture, a career change prompted partly by her conflict with Pamela, though she didn't elaborate. The thing is, she continued, her voice dropping slightly, it's never just about the rules. It's about making examples of people who don't bend to her will. The fence wasn't about your lawn, it was about you daring to challenge her at the meeting. Over the next few days, I discovered Pamela had filed 3 more violations against me. Unauthorized lawn structures, the destroyed fence she'd run over, improper landscape maintenance, again the damage she'd caused, and unapproved exterior fixtures, my security camera. I meticulously documented everything and filed counter-complaints with evidence from my cameras. Pamela escalated by now driving across my lawn twice daily, morning and evening, creating even deeper ruts. Carl visited me privately one evening, shifting uncomfortably on my porch, as if expecting to be observed. "Look, Matthews," he said, eyes darting to the street and back, "I know Pamela can be difficult, but take some advice from someone who's been here a while. Pick your battles, for your own good." His demeanor was strange. Not just conflict avoidant, but genuinely fearful. When I asked why he didn't enforce the HOA rules equally, he mumbled something about community harmony and left quickly when a car drove by. Determined to protect my property, I installed large decorative boulders along the edge of my lawn, carefully checking HOA guidelines to ensure compliance. They were aesthetic, properly spaced, and painted a tasteful color approved for landscape accents. Pamela was furious, but couldn't drive over them. She retaliated by having her landscaper blow leaves and debris onto my property. Then I received notice of a special HOA meeting to discuss problem properties, clearly targeting me. The night before the meeting, my cameras caught Pamela approach my property at nearly midnight. She looked around furtively, then pulled out a can of spray paint, defacing my boulders with obscenities. I now had indisputable evidence of criminal vandalism. Not just HOA violations, but actual property damage that could involve police. I thought this would finally end it. I was wrong, because what Pamela did next would make her petty vandalism look like child's play. I presented my evidence at the special HOA meeting, including clear footage of Pamela's midnight vandalism. The room fell silent as they watched her deliberately spray painting my boulders. Carl reluctantly announced she would pay for damages and issued a formal warning. For 2 peaceful weeks, I thought the war was over. I began sketching plans for my workshop, started dating Heather, and even secured a major playground dine contract. Then came the certified letter that changed everything, a county notice claiming someone had reported my planned workshop as a commercial operation requiring special permits. The complaint included detailed accusations about heavy machinery and client traffic, information that could only have come from someone who had seen my designs. My permits were now delayed at least 6 months, with required studies totaling nearly $15,000. When I confronted Pamela about this, she smirked and mentioned her friends at the county. That night, I discovered her brother Jeremy Harding was the county commissioner overseeing zoning, a connection never mentioned in her HOA bio. Staring at the bureaucratic nightmare facing me, I realized she didn't just want to win our dispute, she wanted to financially destroy me and force me out. It was time for a different approach. Taking a week off work, I dove into research about HOA laws, county regulations, and Pamela's past. What emerged was shocking. Her real estate business specialized in selling homes in our neighborhood, and her HOA power directly benefited her financially. Property records revealed homeowners who opposed Pamela often sold within a year, typically at below market prices, and almost always listed with her agency. Heather, working evenings with me, revealed why she'd left her previous career. She'd briefly worked in the county commissioner's office, where she accidentally discovered documents about secret arrangements between Pamela and Jeremy. She was fired for information leakage, though she'd never actually leaked anything. "They ruined my career before I could say a word," she explained tearfully. The harassment intensified. County inspectors appeared with anonymous complaints about unpermitted operations. A local news website published doctored images suggesting my playground designs were unsafe. My company received complaints from concerned parents, all traceable to a fake email address. My bank even notified me about foreclosure proceedings due to an HOA conditional loan clause that hadn't existed when I purchased the house. Help arrived unexpectedly. A bank employee who'd previously been targeted by Pamela provided evidence my loan documents had been falsified after closing. Harold Harrison, a retired county planning director, became an ally, explaining the siblings' long-running scheme. Jeremy approves developments, Pamela forces out strategic homeowners, they buy low and sell high when development increases property values. Our small resistance group, Heather, Harold, myself, and 3 former victims of Pamela, developed a counter-strategy. Pamela's problem isn't her intelligence, I explained, it's that she always wins because people give up too soon. She's never faced someone patient enough to wait for her to truly expose herself. One evening, while researching at my kitchen table, I spotted Pamela outside with 2 men photographing my house and marking positions on my lawn. Instead of confronting them, I quietly documented their activities. Our plan took shape. I would appear defeated, spreading news about selling my house at a loss and moving within 30 days. Meanwhile, I installed an upgraded sprinkler system containing waterproof microphones and tiny cameras, technology that would capture every incriminating conversation as Pamela, increasingly confident, grew careless about what she said while crossing my property. The final piece fell into place when Carl approached me privately, trembling as he revealed they killed my wife. Not directly, but Pamela falsified her insurance documents when she was diagnosed with cancer. By the time we sorted it out, treatment was too late. His eyes hardened with resolve. I've been their puppet for years because of financial mistakes I made after Elaine died, but I can't live with myself anymore. I want to help. With our team in place and evidence mounting daily, we prepared the perfect trap. I let word spread about selling to Pamela's investment group at a steep loss, scheduling the closing at my house, neutral territory where she'd feel comfortable revealing her true nature. As Heather squeezed my hand before taking her position, she whispered, "No matter what happens today, you've already won by not becoming like them." Her words steadied me for what was to come, the moment when Pamela Harding would finally face justice. The operation culminated on signing day. Pamela and Jeremy arrived at my house with a notary, later identified as their longtime accomplice, all smiles and faux sympathy. "You're making the right choice, Gregory," Pamela said, patting my arm condescendingly. "Sometimes it's best to just start fresh somewhere else." I had my recording system ready, with my support team, Heather, Harold, and 2 special investigators, hiding in the bedroom as planned. Pamela presented clearly fraudulent paperwork, with a selling price just 40% of actual value, alongside documents releasing Jeremy from all liability. I played my part perfectly, appearing nervous, but resigned. When I pretended concern about the county seizing my house for a parking lot, Pamela laughed. There was never going to be a parking lot. That's just a tactic we use to devalue properties. We've done it with 22 houses before yours. Jeremy, comfortable in what he thought was a private conversation among conspirators, boasted openly. "The beauty of the system is its simplicity," he explained, loosening his tie. "I modified the planning documents, changed the condemnation boundaries after the sale, and nobody ever checks, because the paperwork is so boring." He detailed how they'd ruined the reputations of homeowners who refused to sell, falsifying complaints, manipulating loan documents, even staging evidence of code violations. As I continued asking questions, Pamela grew impatient. "Do you want to sign or not? If not, we have plenty of ways to make you crumble completely. Ask Carl what happened to his wife." Jeremy added chillingly, "She didn't die of cancer like everyone thinks. She found out about our operations and was going to talk. An unfortunate accident with her medication." I signed the documents, but they were prepared copies, with different terms that Pamela and Jeremy didn't notice in their overconfidence. As Pamela was about to pack up the papers, I asked, innocently, "What about the doctor you helped disappear? You just said that, right, Jeremy?" Their expressions froze. I turned on my TV, showing their conversation being live-streamed to the district attorney's office. I revealed I'd recorded all their meetings for 3 weeks using the hidden devices in my sprinkler system, the very path Pamela used daily. The color drained from Jeremy's face. "You don't understand," he shouted, looking wildly around the room. "They have everything. People are dead, Pamela." The bedroom door opened, revealing the special investigators along with Carl, who had been wearing a recording device for the past month. "I didn't win because I'm stronger," I told Pamela as the investigators read them their rights, "but because I'm more patient. You always win because people give up too soon." Pamela transformed before our eyes, from arrogant community tyrant to frantic criminal, finally showing her true nature. She lunged for the documents, knocking over a lamp in her desperation. Carl watched with quiet satisfaction, completing his redemption journey. Jeremy completely collapsed, immediately offering to confess everything for a reduced sentence, betraying Pamela without hesitation. As they were handcuffed, the neighborhood erupted outside my house. Word had spread rapidly, and dozens of residents gathered on my lawn, many of them Pamela's former victims. They stood in silent witness as the siblings were led to separate police cars. One elderly man actually applauded. A woman I'd never spoken to handed me flowers. It wasn't just my victory. It was liberation for an entire community that had lived under Pamela's shadow for years. As Pamela was loaded into the police car, she screamed threats at me. "You have no idea how many connections I have. I'll be back. You'll lose everything." But her words had lost their power. They were just the desperate cries of someone who had finally faced consequences for their actions. The case against Pamela and Jeremy Harding was just beginning, but their reign of terror in Sunnyside Estates was over. The case against Pamela and Jeremy Harding dominated local headlines for months, eventually catching national attention as more details emerged. I'd declined countless interview requests, speaking only to investigators as a key witness. The evidence we'd gathered revealed not just neighborhood bullying, but a sophisticated criminal enterprise that had operated unchecked for years. In the courtroom, Pamela maintained her composure until her own son testified against her, revealing she had taught him document forgery as a teenager, calling it life skills for success. The jury took less than 4 hours to return guilty verdicts on all counts. Pamela received a 25-year sentence, while Jeremy got 15 years despite his cooperation. This was not merely financial crime, the judge stated during sentencing. This was an attack on the very concept of community and the sanctity of home. Throughout the process, I refused all financial rewards, insisting only that the victims receive proper compensation. My stance puzzled the district attorney, who couldn't understand why I wouldn't claim the substantial whistleblower reward I was entitled to. This was never about money, I explained. It was about justice for people who couldn't fight back. Heather's testimony moved the entire courtroom to silence. She revealed how Pamela's schemes had cost her not just her legal career, but her marriage and nearly her life. "I lost everything," she said quietly. "That's why I changed to landscape architecture. I needed to heal by creating something beautiful from damaged earth." Her courage inspired dozens of other victims to come forward, expanding the case far beyond our neighborhood. Carl also testified against his former manipulator, describing how Pamela had contributed to his wife's death by falsifying insurance documents that delayed critical cancer treatment. After the trial, he established a support network for HOA fraud victims, turning his grief and guilt into something constructive. The aftermath transformed our community. New transparency laws, nicknamed the Matthews Act, were passed in our state, requiring financial disclosure for HOA boards and creating oversight mechanisms. Heather led a transition committee that reimagined how our neighborhood would be governed, implementing an innovative model based on democratic participation and sustainability principles. What mattered most to me, though, was how life flourished in the wake of justice. I finally built my dream workshop in the corner of my property, creating playground designs that incorporated subtle elements encouraging cooperation among children. Heather's landscape architecture practice thrived as she specialized in restoring damaged community spaces, earning recognition for what she called healing design. One spring afternoon, as cherry blossoms drifted across my now pristine lawn, I asked Heather to marry me. We wed the following month in our backyard, surrounded by neighbors who had transformed from strangers to friends through our shared experience. "We're living proof that something beautiful can grow even in toxic soil," Heather said in her vows, causing both laughter and tears among our guests. On the 1-year anniversary of Pamela's conviction, our neighborhood held a community celebration. Children played on the new playground built on land that had once belonged to Pamela. their laughter the perfect counterpoint to the silence that had once governed our streets. My lawn, once the battleground for this unlikely war, now featured a small artistic water feature that neighbors jokingly called the secret weapon, a reminder that sometimes standing firm on what's right can change everything. That evening, sitting on the porch with Heather, watching fireflies blink on across perfectly maintained front yards where neighbors now waved and chatted freely, I reflected on how different things had become. My ex-wife always said I was too gentle, that I never knew how to fight, I told Heather, squeezing her hand. But I've learned that fighting isn't about who shouts the loudest, it's about who thinks the smartest. Not about strength, but patience. A car drove by, carefully avoiding my lawn, as all cars did now. Heather smiled and raised her glass. "To the most expensive lesson Pamela Harding ever received," she toasted. I clinked my glass against hers, completing the thought. Never underestimate a man with a sprinkler system and the ability to wait. The breeze rustled through the oak tree that had first attracted me to this property, now thriving like the community around it. Children's laughter drifted from the playground, the sound I'd dedicated my career to protecting. What had started as tire tracks on grass had revealed corruption that had poisoned an entire community. By standing firm on my small patch of lawn, I had helped restore something precious that had been lost: trust, connection, and the true meaning of home. As darkness fell and porch lights flickered on around the neighborhood, lights that now represented vigilant community rather than fearful isolation, I realized that true justice isn't just about punishment. It's about rebuilding what was broken, healing what was wounded, and creating something stronger in the spaces where harm once lived. The sprinklers kicked on with their gentle rhythm, watering the grass that had started it all. No hidden cameras now, no secret microphones, just water, nurturing growth, healing damaged earth. And really, isn't that what justice is supposed to do?
Thanks for watching QA Stories. If you enjoyed this one, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more wild tales coming your way.